The train whistle pierced the morning air as Olivia Thornfield clutched her small leather suitcase, knuckles white with anxiety. Chicago's bustling station disappeared behind her as the locomotive carried her westward toward a future she'd never wanted, a husband she'd never met, in a town whose name she could barely pronounce. Her father's gambling debts had sealed her fate. She was merely cargo now, purchased and paid for. The rhythmic clacking of the train's wheels against the tracks matched her pounding heart as she gazed out the window at the passing landscape. The year was 1876, and America was celebrating its centennial while Olivia mourned the death of her freedom. At 22, she had dreamed of becoming a schoolteacher, not a mail-order bride to some rough frontier man who'd purchased her contract for the price of her father's poker losses. First time heading west, miss. The elderly woman sitting across from her smiled kindly, her weathered face creasing with gentle curiosity. Olivia nodded, forcing a smile. Yes, madam. You look too fine-boned for frontier life. Let me guess, mail-order arrangement. Olivia's cheeks flushed with shame. Is it that obvious? I've seen that look before, child, that mixture of terror and resignation. The woman patted her hand. My sister went that route 30 years ago, turned out just fine for her in the end, but Olivia couldn't imagine any fine ending to her story. According to the contract, she was bound for Bitter Creek, Wyoming territory, to marry a cattle rancher named Jasper Williams. The name conjured images of a grizzled old man with tobacco-stained teeth and calloused hands that would claim her as property. 4 days later, exhausted and disheveled, Olivia stepped down from the train onto the rough-hewn platform of Bitter Creek's small station. The late afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as she squinted, searching for the man who owned her future. Her emerald green traveling dress, her finest, was wrinkled and dusty from the journey, her auburn hair falling loose from its once neat arrangement. A tall figure approached, and Olivia steeled herself, rehearsing the polite introduction she'd practiced throughout the journey. But it wasn't Jasper Williams who stopped before her. Instead, she found herself looking up at a young man, perhaps 28, with sun-bronzed skin and the clearest blue eyes she'd ever seen. Miss Thornfield. His voice was deep but gentle, touched with a slight Western drawl. Yes, she replied cautiously. I'm here to meet Mr. Williams. The man removed his hat, revealing thick sandy brown hair. My name is Beckett Hawkins. I work at the Silver Spur Ranch outside town. He hesitated, his expression unreadable. I'm afraid there's been a change of plans, Miss Thornfield. Olivia's heart sank. Had her purchaser rejected her sight unseen? Was she to be passed along to another man like unwanted merchandise? Mr. Williams passed away 3 weeks ago, Beckett continued. Influenza. It swept through the northern part of the county. Oh, Olivia wasn't sure what to feel: relief that she wouldn't be married to Jasper Williams, or panic at what would become of her now. I see, Beckett shifted uncomfortably. When his affairs were settled, we found the contract and your travel papers. I'm sorry you made this journey for nothing. Olivia felt the ground tilt beneath her. Her father had taken her savings, every penny she'd earned, giving piano lessons to purchase her train ticket west. She had exactly $2.17 in her reticule, not nearly enough to return to Chicago, where nothing awaited her anyway. Her father had likely disappeared to escape his creditors, and their small apartment had surely been rented to someone else by now. What happens to me now? She asked, hating the quiver in her voice. Beckett's expression softened. That's why I'm here, Miss Thornfield. The men at the Silver Spur took up a collection. He reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a train ticket. This will take you back to Chicago if that's what you want. Olivia stared at the ticket in disbelief. Your sending me back seemed the right thing to do. His eyes met hers directly. No woman should be sold like cattle. You deserve better than that. The kindness in his voice nearly undid her. After days of dreading her fate, this stranger's decency was almost more than she could bear. Tears threatened, but she blinked them back, unwilling to break down on the station platform. The eastbound train doesn't come through until tomorrow morning, Beckett continued. I've arranged a room for you at the boarding house. Mrs. Peterson is expecting you. Olivia reached for the ticket with trembling fingers. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. This is unexpectedly kind. A small smile touched his lips. Not everyone out west is a barbarian, Miss Thornfield, despite what they might say back east. He picked up her suitcase and offered his arm. The boarding house is just down the street. I can escort you there now if you're ready. Olivia took his arm, struck by the solid strength she felt beneath his shirt sleeve. They walked in silence along Bitter Creek's dusty Main Street, passing the general store, a saloon, and what appeared to be a small law office. The town was modest, but seemed orderly compared to the wild frontier outpost she'd imagined. How many people live here? She asked, trying to calm her racing thoughts. About 300 in town proper, more scattered around the valley. Cattle country, mostly, though there's talk of a railroad spur line coming through that might change things. As they approached a 2-story white clapboard house with a neat picket fence, Beckett paused. Mrs. Peterson runs a respectable establishment. You'll be comfortable here for the night. A plump, gray-haired woman appeared on the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. You must be Miss Thornfield. Come in, come in. You poor dear, you must be exhausted from your journey. Beckett handed Olivia's suitcase to Mrs. Peterson. I'll come by tomorrow morning to escort Miss Thornfield to the station. Before Olivia could properly thank him, he tipped his hat and strode away, his long legs carrying him quickly down the street. She watched him go, a strange mixture of relief and something like disappointment settling in her chest. The boarding house was clean and cheerful, with floral wallpaper and polished wooden floors. Mrs. Peterson showed her to a small but comfortable room on the second floor, chattering all the while about local gossip and how tragic it was about poor Mr. Williams. Though between us, she lowered her voice conspiratorially, you might have dodged a bullet there. Jasper was nearly 50 and not what anyone would call a gentle soul, lost his first wife in childbirth 10 years ago and has been a bitter man since. Olivia sat heavily on the edge of the bed after Mrs. Peterson left. The reality of her situation began to sink in. She had nowhere to go. Chicago held nothing for her now. Yet the alternative finding work in this frontier town seemed equally daunting. What skills did she have that would be valued here? That evening, she picked at the hearty beef stew Mrs. Peterson served, her appetite diminished by worry. The other boarders, 2 traveling salesmen and an elderly couple visiting their son, made polite conversation, but Olivia's responses were distracted. After dinner, she sat on the front porch swing, watching as Bitter Creek settled into evening. Lamps were lit in windows, and from somewhere down the street came the faint sounds of a piano playing in the saloon. Mind if I join you? Olivia started at the voice, turning to find Beckett Hawkins standing at the bottom of the porch steps, hat in hand. Mr. Hawkins, I didn't expect to see you again until morning. Thought I should check if you needed anything before tomorrow. He climbed the steps and sat beside her on the swing, leaving a respectful distance between them. That's very considerate, she said, studying him in the fading light. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the mark of a man who spent his days outdoors. His hands were strong and calloused, but clean, the nails neatly trimmed. Have you thought about what you'll do when you return to Chicago? He asked. Olivia sighed. I have no family there anymore, no home to return to. She surprised herself with her candor. I suppose I could seek a position as a governess or companion, though such positions are difficult to secure without references. Beckett nodded thoughtfully. What work did you do before? I gave piano lessons to children, and I helped at my father's bookshop before things changed. She couldn't bring herself to explain how her father's gambling had destroyed their lives. You're educated then? Yes, my mother insisted upon it before she passed. I completed my schooling at Miss Harrington's Academy for Young Ladies. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the creaking of the swing and the distant sounds of the town. Bitter Creek needs a schoolteacher, Beckett said finally. The last one left 2 months ago to marry a miner up in Montana Territory. The town council's been searching for a replacement. Olivia's heart quickened. A schoolteacher, but I don't have formal training as a teacher. You're educated and you've taught piano. That's more qualification than most candidates were likely to find out here. He turned to face her, his expression earnest. Would you consider staying? Just until the end of the school term, if nothing else. It would give you time to decide what you really want. The offer was unexpected, yet strangely appealing. Teaching had always been her dream, even if she'd imagined it differently. Where would I live? How would I support myself until I received wages? The teachers' quarters are attached to the schoolhouse, small but private. As for immediate needs, I'm sure we could arrange an advance on your salary. He smiled slightly. Bitter Creek may be small, but we take care of our own. But I'm not one of your own, Olivia pointed out. You could be, he said simply, if you wanted. The quiet confidence in his voice stirred something in her. For the first time since leaving Chicago, Olivia felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps there was a place for her here after all. May I think about it overnight? She asked. Of course. Beckett stood, settling his hat back on his head. I'll come by at 8 tomorrow. Whatever you decide, I'll respect your choice. After he left, Olivia remained on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the vast Wyoming sky. The thought of teaching, of having purpose and independence, was intoxicating after feeling so powerless. By the time she retired to her room, her decision was made. The following morning, dressed in her second-best gown of pale blue cotton, Olivia waited on the porch with her suitcase. When Beckett appeared, right at 8 o'clock, she met his questioning gaze with a smile. I'd like to meet with the town council about the teaching position, Mr. Hawkins. His answering smile transformed his face, making him appear younger and even more handsome. I had a feeling you might. I took the liberty of arranging a meeting this morning. Instead of heading toward the train station, they walked to the town hall, a modest brick building at the center of Bitter Creek. Inside, 3 men awaited them: Mayor Thompson, a portly man with impressive whiskers, Dr. Keller, whose kind eyes reminded Olivia of her grandfather, and Mr. Perkins, the owner of the general store. To Olivia's surprise, the interview was brief and largely formalities. It seemed Beckett had already spoken on her behalf, and her education and background were deemed more than sufficient. By noon, she was officially hired as Bitter Creek's new schoolteacher, with classes to begin the following Monday. The children will be excited to return to their studies, Mayor Thompson said as they concluded the meeting. We've had to cancel school these past weeks, much to the delight of the young ones and the frustration of their parents. How many students will I have? Olivia asked. 27 at last count, Dr. Keller replied, ages 6 to 16. It's a challenge, teaching so many different levels, but our previous teacher managed by grouping them according to ability. After signing the necessary papers, Beckett escorted Olivia to the schoolhouse at the edge of town, a simple one-room building with large windows and rows of wooden desks. Attached to its rear was a small cabin that would serve as her quarters. It's not much, Beckett said apologetically as he showed her the 2-room dwelling with its small kitchen and bedroom. But it's sturdy and weather-tight. The stove works well, and there's a good well just outside. Olivia turned in a slow circle, taking in what would be her new home. It was humble compared to the apartment she'd shared with her father in Chicago, but it was clean and most importantly hers alone. It's perfect, she said softly. I never thought I'd have a place of my own. Beckett's expression warmed. Every person should have their own place in the world, Miss Thornfield. Over the next few days, Olivia settled into her new life with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. The townspeople were welcoming, bringing small gifts to help her establish her household: a patchwork quilt from Mrs. Peterson, a set of dishes from Mr. Perkins and his wife, fresh baked bread from the baker's wife. Beckett visited daily, initially with the excuse of helping her prepare the schoolhouse, fixing a loose floorboard or adjusting a stubborn window. But soon his visits extended to evenings on her small porch, where they would talk as the sunset painted the western sky in brilliant oranges and purples. She learned that Beckett was the foreman at the Silver Spur Ranch, having worked his way up from a simple ranch hand over the past 8 years. He'd come west from Pennsylvania after the war, seeking a fresh start like so many others. My father didn't return from Gettysburg, he told her one evening. The farm wasn't the same without him. My mother remarried a good man, but I needed something different. Do you ever regret coming west? Olivia asked. Beckett looked out at the rolling landscape beyond the town. Never. There's a freedom here you can't find back east, room to breathe to become who you're meant to be. On Monday morning, Olivia faced her students for the first time, heart pounding but determined to make a good impression. The children filed in, eyeing her curiously farm kids in homespun clothes alongside the merchant's children in their more refined attire. "Good morning," she said, standing tall before them. "I am Miss Thornfield, and I will be your teacher. I believe in the power of education to open doors, and I promise to do my best to help each of you learn and grow." By day's end, Olivia was exhausted but exhilarated. The children had tested her, as children will with any new authority figure, but she'd maintained control with a mixture of firmness and genuine interest in their learning. As she was closing up the schoolhouse, a rider approached Beckett, returning from a day's work at the ranch. "How was your first day, schoolmarm?" he called, dismounting with easy grace. "Challenging, rewarding, exactly what I hoped for," she replied with a smile. "Some of us are having supper at the hotel restaurant to celebrate your first day, nothing fancy but good food." The some of us turned out to be a dozen of the town's prominent citizens, all eager to welcome her properly. Olivia found herself seated between Mrs. Peterson and Beckett, enjoying her first social outing in Bitter Creek. "We're grateful you decided to stay," Mayor Thompson announced, raising his glass in a toast. "To Miss Thornfield, who's already won over our children if my grandson's chatter at dinner is anything to judge by." As the weeks passed, autumn painted the landscape in gold and crimson. Olivia grew more confident in her teaching, developing a genuine affection for her students. She established a lending library in one corner of the schoolhouse with books donated by townspeople, started a small school garden, and organized weekly recitations to help the children develop public speaking skills. Her friendship with Beckett deepened as well. He often rode into town after work, timing his arrival to coincide with the end of the school day. Sometimes, he brought small treasures from the ranch, a particularly beautiful stone, an eagle feather, once even a tiny abandoned bird's nest. "For your nature studies," he explained, though they both knew it was an excuse for the visits. One crisp Saturday in late October, Beckett arrived on her doorstep with an invitation. "The aspen groves north of town are at their peak color," he said. "I thought you might enjoy seeing them before the leaves fall. I've packed a picnic lunch, if you're interested." Olivia hesitated only briefly before accepting. The townspeople had been nothing but accepting of their friendship, but she was still conscious of maintaining her reputation as the schoolteacher. "Mrs. Peterson has agreed to chaperone," Beckett added with a knowing smile. "She's waiting in the wagon." The day was perfect, clear skies, gentle breezes, and the aspen groves resplendent in golden glory. Mrs. Peterson, after helping spread the picnic blanket, tactfully found reasons to explore nearby, giving them privacy while remaining within proper chaperoning distance. "I've never seen anything so beautiful," Olivia said, gazing up at the trembling gold leaves against the brilliant blue sky. "I have," Beckett replied softly, his eyes on her face. Olivia felt her cheeks warm under his gaze. "Mr. Hawkins, you'll make me blush with such talk." "Beckett," he corrected. "After all this time, I think you could call me Beckett. Then you must call me Olivia." Something shifted between them that afternoon, a recognition of feelings that had been growing since that first day at the train station. When his hand found hers as they walked back to the wagon, she didn't pull away. The following week brought the first snowfall of the season, blanketing Bitter Creek in pristine white. School continued, with the children bringing extra wood for the stove and arriving in boots and heavy coats, cheeks rosy from the cold. Thanksgiving approached, and with it came an invitation from Mrs. Peterson to join the communal dinner she hosted annually for those without family nearby. Olivia accepted gratefully, looking forward to the celebration. The evening before Thanksgiving, as Olivia was grading arithmetic papers by lamplight, a knock came at her door. Beckett stood on her porch, snowflakes dusting his hat and shoulders. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," he said, his breath fogging in the cold air. "Not at all. Please come in from the cold." She stepped back, allowing him to enter the small sitting room that doubled as her kitchen. Beckett removed his hat but remained standing, seeming uncharacteristically nervous. I won't stay long. I just wanted to give you something before tomorrow. From inside his coat, he withdrew a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. It's not much, but when I saw it, I thought of you. Olivia unwrapped the gift carefully to find a leather-bound journal, its cover tooled with a delicate pattern of leaves and flowers. For your thoughts, Beckett explained. You mentioned once that you used to keep a journal back in Chicago. It's beautiful, she whispered, deeply touched that he'd remembered such a small detail from their conversations. Thank you. There's something else I wanted to say. Beckett took a deep breath. I'm thankful you stayed in Bitter Creek, Olivia. These past months have been the happiest of my life. The sincerity in his blue eyes made her heart race. I'm thankful too, Beckett, for the opportunity you gave me, for your friendship. Is that all it is? Friendship? His voice was quiet, uncertain. Olivia set the journal aside and took a step closer to him. I think we both know it's become more than that. His smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. I was hoping you felt the same. He reached for her hand, his touch gentle. I care for you, Olivia, more than I thought possible. And I care for you, she admitted, the words both frightening and freeing. Beckett's gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes, asking a silent question. When she nodded slightly, he leaned down and kissed her, a soft, tender touch that sent warmth spreading through her entire body. When they parted, Olivia knew with certainty that her life had changed irrevocably. What had begun as a journey of desperation had led her to this moment, to this man, to a future brighter than any she could have imagined. The winter passed in a haze of quiet joy. Beckett called on Olivia properly, taking her to church socials and community gatherings. They went sleigh riding with groups of friends, attended the Christmas pageant where her students performed admirably, and spent countless evenings by her fire, talking about everything and nothing. By spring, their courtship was the town's worst-kept secret, with even the youngest students giggling when Beckett appeared at the schoolhouse. One evening in early April, as the first wildflowers began to dot the prairie, Beckett invited Olivia for a ride to see the sunset from his favorite spot on the Silver Spur Ranch. The ranch owner's wife, Mrs. Henderson, accompanied them as chaperone, though she discreetly remained with the wagon when they walked to the hilltop overlook. The view was spectacular, rolling grasslands stretching to distant mountains, the sky painted in dramatic strokes of pink and gold. I first came to this spot the day I arrived at the Silver Spur, Beckett said, standing beside her. I was just a drifter then, looking for work. Mr. Henderson hired me despite having little experience with cattle. He said he could teach skills but couldn't teach character. He was right to trust his judgment, Olivia said, slipping her hand into his. Beckett turned to face her, his expression serious. I've been saving all these years. Last month, I purchased land of my own 300 acres southeast of town with good water and grazing. Your own ranch. Olivia's eyes widened. Beckett, that's wonderful. It's just land now, but I've drawn up plans for a house. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded paper which he handed to her. Olivia unfolded it to find a careful pencil drawing of a modest but charming farmhouse with a wide front porch and plenty of windows. There's room for a vegetable garden here, he pointed, and maybe an apple orchard over there. The house has 3 bedrooms for a family. Her heart began to race as she realized what he was saying. Beckett took both her hands in his. I never expected to find someone like you, Olivia, someone so brave and kind and determined. You've brought light into my life that I didn't know was missing. He lowered himself to one knee, still holding her hands. I love you. Will you marry me? Will you build a life with me on that land? Tears of happiness blurred her vision. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you. Beckett rose and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the love and promise of their future together. When they finally parted, breathless and smiling, the sun had set, leaving the sky a deep, velvety blue scattered with emerging stars. I was sold as a mail-order bride, Olivia said softly, but you bought my freedom instead. And you gave me your heart freely, Beckett replied. That's worth more than all the gold in Wyoming territory. They were married on a perfect June day with the entire town turning out to celebrate. The schoolhouse, where Olivia had found her calling, was transformed with wildflowers and ribbon, and her students formed an honor guard, tossing flower petals as the newlyweds emerged. The town had insisted on hosting the celebration, with each family contributing food and drink for the feast that followed. Mayor Thompson presided over the ceremony, and Mrs. Peterson, who had become like a mother to Olivia, gave her away. Olivia wore a gown of ivory silk that the ladies of the town had helped her sew, with lace at the collar and cuffs that had once belonged to Mrs. Peterson's daughter. Beckett, standing tall and handsome in a new black suit, watched her approach with such love in his eyes that she nearly lost her composure before reaching his side. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, promises to love and cherish, to support and respect, to build a life together through whatever challenges they might face. When the mayor pronounced them husband and wife, Beckett's kiss was tender but filled with promise, bringing cheers from the assembled townspeople. The celebration lasted well into the night, with music and dancing under the stars. As Beckett twirled Olivia around the improvised dance floor, she caught glimpses of their friends Mrs. Peterson wiping away happy tears, the Hendersons clapping in rhythm to the fiddle music, her students watching wide-eyed as their teacher danced with her new husband. "Are you happy, Mrs. Hawkins?" Beckett whispered in her ear as they swayed to a slower tune. "Completely," she answered, resting her head against his chest. "And you? I've never known such happiness." His arms tightened around her, "And the best is yet to come." That night, they stayed at the hotel in town, in the finest room available, decorated with flowers and small gifts from well-wishers. Their coming together as husband and wife was everything Olivia had dreamed: tender, passionate, and filled with love that transformed the physical act into something transcendent. Afterward, lying in Beckett's arms as moonlight filtered through the curtains, Olivia reflected on the strange journey that had brought her to this moment. What had begun in desperation and fear had transformed into the greatest blessing of her life. "What are you thinking?" Beckett asked, stroking her hair. "That sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead us to the best," she replied. "If my father hadn't sold me as a bride, I would never have come west, would never have found you. Then I should thank him," Beckett said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Though I'd still like to have words with any man who would sell his daughter." The following day, they traveled to their new home, where Beckett had been working every spare moment to complete the house before the wedding. Though not as grand as his original plans, those would come with time, he promised it was solid and welcoming, with the wide porch he'd sketched and plenty of windows to capture the sunlight. Inside, Olivia found furniture crafted by Beckett himself or purchased from town, a sturdy table and chairs in the kitchen, a comfortable sofa before the fireplace, and in their bedroom, a beautifully carved bed with a wedding quilt made by the women of Bitter Creek. "It's beautiful," she said, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. "Our home. It will be even more beautiful with you in it," Beckett replied, watching her with a smile. "Everything is better with you, Olivia." The school board had granted Olivia leave until the fall term, giving the newlyweds the summer to establish their home and begin work on the ranch. Those months were a time of adjustment and discovery, of learning each other's habits and preferences, of building routines that would sustain their life together. Beckett worked from dawn to dusk, fencing pastures and constructing corrals, preparing for the cattle he would purchase once the infrastructure was complete. Olivia established her garden, learned to cook on the wood-burning stove, and set up a small classroom in one corner of their home where she could prepare lessons for the coming school year. In the evenings, they would sit on their porch, watching the sunset and sharing the events of their day. Sometimes Beckett would read aloud from one of Olivia's books, his deep voice bringing the stories to life. Other times they would simply sit in comfortable silence, content in each other's company. Their physical relationship deepened as well, a dance of discovery and passion that left them both breathless and ever more deeply in love. Olivia, who had once feared this aspect of marriage, found joy and completion in Beckett's arms, his tenderness and consideration making her feel cherished and desired. September brought the beginning of the school term, and Olivia returned to teaching with renewed enthusiasm. Beckett had purchased a gentle mare for her to ride into town each day, and the journey became a peaceful time of reflection before and after her busy days with the students. "How is married life treating you, Miss Thornfield, Mrs. Hawkins, Mrs. Peterson asked when they met at the general store one afternoon. "Wonderfully," Olivia replied with a smile, "better than I ever could have imagined. I knew that boy was special the moment he came to arrange your room that day," the older woman said with satisfaction. "The way he spoke about you, so respectful, so concerned for your welfare. Not many men would have taken up a collection to send a mail-order bride back home. I thank God every day that the eastbound train didn't come until the next morning," Olivia admitted. Those 24 hours changed everything. By Christmas, Olivia suspected she was carrying their first child. She waited until Christmas morning to share the news, placing a tiny pair of knitted booties among Beckett's gifts. His expression when he unwrapped the small package was one she would treasure forever, shock giving way to overwhelming joy, his blue eyes filling with tears as he pulled her into his arms. "A baby," he whispered against her hair. "Our baby. Due in July, according to Dr. Keller." Olivia had confirmed her suspicions with the doctor the previous week, swearing him to secrecy until she could tell Beckett. "Are you happy about it?" Beckett asked, searching her face. "So happy," she assured him. "A little nervous, but mostly happy." "You'll be a wonderful mother," he said with conviction. "Our child is already blessed having you." As Olivia's body changed with pregnancy, Beckett's attentiveness increased tenfold. He insisted on hiring a local girl to help with household chores, built a cradle for the baby with his own hands, and read every book on childbirth and infant care he could find. The cattle operation was thriving, with 30 head purchased from neighboring ranches now grazing on their land. Beckett had hired 2 young cowboys to help with the work, building a small bunkhouse for them near the barn. "We're becoming quite the operation," Olivia observed one evening as they sat on the porch, her hands resting on her growing belly. "Just the beginning," Beckett replied, his arm around her shoulders. "I want to build something lasting, for you, for our child, for the family we'll raise here." In late July, as the summer heat lay heavy over the land, Olivia went into labor. Dr. Keller was summoned, along with Mrs. Peterson, who had assisted at countless births over the years. Beckett paced the porch, banished from the bedroom but unwilling to go farther than shouting distance. After 14 hours of labor, their daughter was born, a robust, healthy girl with a shock of dark hair and her father's blue eyes. "She's perfect," Beckett whispered when he was finally allowed to enter the bedroom, cradling the tiny bundle with infinite care. "Just like her mother." They named her Grace Catherine Hawkins, Grace for the blessing she represented in their lives, and Catherine after Olivia's mother. The following Sunday, they took her to church to be baptized, with Mrs. Peterson and Mayor Thompson standing as godparents. The entire town seemed to turn out for the occasion, eager to welcome the newest resident of Bitter Creek. "You've come a long way from that frightened young woman at the train station," Mrs. Peterson observed as they stood outside the church afterward, accepting congratulations from well-wishers. "I have," Olivia agreed, watching as Beckett proudly showed their daughter to a group of ranchers. "I came west expecting the worst and found everything I never knew I wanted. God works in mysterious ways," the older woman said with a knowing smile. "Sometimes the darkest roads lead to the brightest destinations." As Grace grew from infant to toddler, the Hawkins Ranch prospered. Beckett added to their herd each year, built a larger barn, and expanded the house with a second story that included additional bedrooms and a proper study for Olivia. She continued teaching, bringing Grace with her to school when she was old enough, delighting in how the students doted on her daughter. The little girl became the mascot of the schoolhouse, soaking up knowledge like a sponge and demonstrating an early aptitude for reading that made her mother proud. In the spring of Grace's 3rd year, Olivia discovered she was expecting again. This pregnancy was easier than the first, her body knowing the way now, the ranch well established enough that Beckett could delegate more tasks to his hired hands. Their son, Benjamin Thomas Hawkins, arrived on a crisp October morning with a lusty cry that Beckett declared could be heard clear to the north pasture. Grace approached her baby brother with solemn curiosity, declaring him very small but nice after careful examination. Life settled into a rhythm of seasons and milestones, first steps and first words, cattle roundups and school pageants, winter storms weathered together by the fireplace and summer picnics by the creek that ran through their property. 5 years after Benjamin's birth, their family was completed with the arrival of twins Alexander James and Andrew William, whose mischievous natures and identical appearances would keep the household in cheerful chaos for years to come. Through it all, Beckett and Olivia's love deepened and matured, weathering the inevitable challenges of ranch life, drought years and harsh winters, illness and occasional financial strain with the strength that comes from absolute trust and devotion. On their 10th anniversary, Beckett surprised Olivia with a trip back east to visit her father, whom they had located living in Boston with a sister Olivia hadn't known existed. The reunion was initially awkward, her father aged and humbled by the years, deeply ashamed of his past actions. "I don't expect your forgiveness," he said, his once commanding voice now frail. "What I did was unforgivable." "I've already forgiven you," Olivia told him, taking his weathered hand in hers. "If not for what happened, I wouldn't have my life now, my husband, my children, my home." Sometimes good comes from even the worst decisions. The visit healed old wounds, and when they returned to Wyoming, Olivia felt a completeness she hadn't known was missing. Her father promised to visit the following summer, eager to meet the grandchildren he'd only seen in photographs. "Are you happy with how everything turned out?" Beckett asked as they approached their ranch, the house visible in the distance, smoke curling from the chimney where Mrs. Peterson was watching over the children. Olivia leaned against his shoulder in the wagon, remembering the frightened young woman who had stepped off the train in Bitter Creek 15 years earlier. "More than happy," she replied. "I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." "With the man who bought your ticket home," Beckett said with a smile, referencing the joke that had become part of their family lore. "No," Olivia corrected, lifting her face for his kiss. "With the man who helped me find my true home right here with him." As they drove toward the house, their children spilled onto the porch, waving excitedly at the returning parents. The setting sun gilded the scene in gold, the home they had built together, the family they had created, the love that had transformed two separate journeys into one shared path. What had begun as an act of kindness, a cowboy buying a train ticket for a mail-order bride, had blossomed into a life richer than either could have imagined. Their story, Olivia thought as Beckett helped her down from the wagon and into the embrace of their waiting children, was proof that sometimes the most beautiful destinations aren't found on any map, but in the hearts of those brave enough to change direction when life offers an unexpected turn in the road. As the years passed, the Hawkins Ranch became one of the most successful in the territory. Beckett's careful management and forward-thinking approaches to cattle breeding earned him respect throughout the region, while Olivia eventually became the superintendent of schools for the entire county, overseeing the education of hundreds of children as new settlements sprang up across the expanding frontier. Their children grew tall and strong, each finding their own path. Grace, with her mother's intelligence and her father's determination, became the first woman from Bitter Creek to attend college, returning with a teaching degree and eventually taking over her mother's original position at the schoolhouse. Benjamin followed in his father's footsteps, working alongside Beckett and eventually taking on more responsibility for the ranch operations. The twins, inseparable in childhood, surprised everyone by pursuing entirely different careers, Alexander becoming a lawyer after studying in Denver, while Andrew discovered a talent for medicine and apprenticed with Dr. Keller. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the entire town gathered for a celebration that rivaled their wedding day. Tables laden with food filled the town square, lanterns hung from every available post, and 3 generations of Bitter Creek residents came to honor the couple who had become pillars of the community. Mayor Thompson, now white-haired but still serving the town he loved, stood to offer a toast. When a young woman stepped off the train that day, and a young cowboy met her with an unexpected offer, none of us could have predicted how that moment would shape our town's future. The Hawkins family has touched all our lives through education, through business, through friendship and example. Here's to Beckett and Olivia, whose love story reminds us that sometimes the best journeys are the ones we never plan to take. Later that evening, as the celebration continued around them, Beckett led Olivia away from the crowd to a quiet spot beneath an old cottonwood tree. 25 years, he said, taking both her hands in his, and you're more beautiful to me now than the day we met. Olivia smiled, the fine lines around her eyes crinkling. Her auburn hair now had threads of silver, and the hands that held his showed the marks of years of work, but her green eyes still shone with the same spirit that had captured his heart decades ago. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if that train had come on schedule that day?" she asked. "If I had taken the ticket back to Chicago without staying that extra day, sometimes," Beckett admitted. "But then, I remember something my father told me before he left for the war. He said that some people go their whole lives never knowing what true love is, and others are blessed enough to find it against all odds. We were the lucky ones, Olivia. Somehow, despite everything, we found each other. Not just luck," she corrected gently. "Your kindness, your decency. When you could have walked away after delivering that ticket, you didn't. You saw a frightened woman with nowhere to go, and you offered her a choice instead of a fate. And you were brave enough to take a chance on a life you never planned," he countered, pulling her close. "On a cowboy and a frontier town that must have seemed a poor substitute for the life you'd imagined. The best decision I ever made," Olivia whispered, leaning up to kiss him. As they returned to the celebration hand in hand, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. What had begun in her father's desperation, and her own fear had transformed into a legacy of love that would continue long after they were gone, in their children and grandchildren, in the school that now bore Olivia's name, in the ranch that would pass to future generations of Hawkins. The mail-order bride who never reached her intended destination had found something far more precious than security or shelter. She had found a man who valued her freedom enough to offer her choice, and who had proven worthy of the love she freely gave in return. And the cowboy who had once collected money for a train ticket east had found his greatest treasure not in the cattle or land he'd accumulated, but in the family and life he'd built with the woman who chose to stay. Their story, passed down through generations of Bitter Creek families, would serve as a reminder that true love begins not with possession or obligation, but with respect and choice freely given. And that sometimes, the most unexpected journeys lead to the most perfect destinations.